with Essential CFO, and it's our pleasure to host this presentation today. Tom Wirma is the president and founder of the Essential CFO QuickBooks reporting tool. And Kev Christian, whose name and email link you see there on the PowerPoint, is the sales manager and will assist you with all your questions and product purchase needs. Before I go any further, I'd ask all of you to enter your audio pin and to mute your phones so that we don't have any feedback during the presentation, which can sometimes be distracting. The agenda for today is to show you an overview of the product and how you work with dashboards, how you access data using Excel, and how you work with the report writer. And to achieve that, what we'll do during the demonstration is show you a sample dashboard layout and how you drill down to transaction level detail. And then we'll show you how the Excel interface works and how a client works, time permitting, how you set up clients, and also the navigation of Essential CFO and the basic report design. All clients will have access to training and installation assistance and implementation assistance, as well as technical support. So you'll never be left on your own. I believe that most of us, or maybe all of us, have had those pains using QuickBooks and trying to filter reports to get the data we want clients, that clients have expressed a need for. And I know I can speak firsthand to that pain and employing workaround solutions to get the data or the reports that I need to clients. And so it's really my pleasure today to introduce you to Essential CFO that will help you cure all those ills, and also the person who conceived it, designed it, nurtured it into the user-friendly product you'll see today. The man and the visionary, Mr. Tom Wirma. It's all yours, Tom.
Got to unmute my microphone. Thank you, Robert. First of all, I hope everybody's doing all right today. I am Tom Wirma, as Robert had mentioned. I want to encourage you, if you have questions, feel free to sort of interrupt if you have something in particular you want to ask about. We're going to go over a lot of things today. There's probably some things that you may want to see a little more in detail, so please just ask. And what you're looking at right now is just this is our website. But there's one caveat. We signed in as a user named Sam Green, which is just a sample user. We're going to go look at the sample consulting data file from QuickBooks today. And unfortunately, I've yet to run into a company that is okay with us using their data file as a sample file. Go figure. They don't like having it shown everywhere. So we're going to use the sample files that QuickBooks generates. You will see some anomalies as we go through this because it's the sample file they generated. I don't think they ever envisioned it would be examined like this. So what I've done is I've come in and I've gone into the I am now looking at a home page. This is a reporting environment. And I'm going to back up a little bit. I have to explain some nomenclature. So we have two levels that you would normally deal with. The first level is what's called the customer level. To us, the customer level is the person responsible for the dashboard. Now, that could be a CPA. It often is. It also could be somebody, an organization directly, if they were to so choose to buy this directly. So if you had a larger organization on QuickBooks, they may look at this and say, you know what, we're going to buy and manage this ourselves. They would be the customer. If you have a CPA who says, I want to buy and use this with my client base, the CPA would be the customer. The second level is an end user. The end user is the actual person in the company looking at the dashboard. So as we go through this today, I'll explain to you which things we sort of targeted to the customer and which things we targeted to the end user. What you'll see now is all targeted to the end user and is at the desire of the customer that they can actually use it or not. So this is a dashboard here, very simple, easy to use. interface. This is a custom design dashboard. Everything we do at Essential CFO is done with the idea that the customer would design the dashboard as it needs to be designed. There's almost nothing that's pre-configured. There is some stuff you can use that's pre-configured to sort of learn, but one of my experiences of being a CFO was that there is no reporting that you can do that's just standard. Maybe the income statement, right? Once a month you look at that, but if you want to look at things day in, day out, it's going to be custom. So this was all built around the idea that there's an accounting firm that wants to look at how they're performing. And there's some interesting things to look at here. There's a hours by billing type. So you can see that in April of 2013, there was like 80% of the hours was non-billable. That's common for accountants to April to not bill anything, right? It's an interesting anomaly, but this is the way this file is set up. You can also see down here we have revenue by contributor, and this is by quarter, this is by month, but what this tells us here is that only one person billed. We'll get back to this, but what this means is that the accounting department entered the time but didn't bill from the time module, right? This brings up kind of an important point. There's a revenue assurance functionality to most dashboards. You don't look at a dashboard just simply because you want to see how you're doing. You also look at it to find potential problems. And obviously, if you're not looking at things at a detailed enough level, you'll never see the problems. And that would be a problem. That would tell you right there the accounting department is not doing a good job. Over here, you can see more indications of that. A common revenue per unit. So they billed $37 an hour. Very, I don't know an accounting firm that works for $37 an hour, but this one does. And then down here, you can see that they didn't bill very much, right? These two are both 100% billable, but you don't see any revenue, which is kind of interesting. So this dashboard is, now that we have the context, we're going to get into some of the functionality. Now, the first thing is it's time aware. This is all configurable, right? None of this is pre-configured. Change it to October, everything changes back, right? And you can see this only goes through October now. This is January through October. Billable hours look great. You can see that this right here is designed to go just off the year, right? So we're still in the fourth quarter, so it'll show us that. This is all through October. That's fantastic. I could change it and say, you know what? I want to look at it by customer. So this is customer but grouped. So if you look, there's a hierarchy of projects underneath it, right? And what this tells me is that for all of the Bowden Imaging System products or projects, this is how we build. We build $77 an hour, which means it's one of our more profitable customers, right? All the time worked here is billable in general, right? And then for the month, for the quarter, and then for the year, not so much, right? And then down here, the revenue by contributor, right? So we did a lot of billing for this particular customer here. So that's kind of nifty, kind of interesting. But the more important thing here is that all of this is configured by the customer. So there is a Manage Connection button here. And if you look at this connection button, we'll come back to this, but if you look at this, you can see we connected by time, right? And we also connected the customer name. This is not a very complicated thing to do, but it needs to be done, and it allows us to filter by anything. As we go through this, you'll see that you can build a filter on any data item in QuickBooks, and I'll show you how to do that. And that allows you to say, I want to filter by some pretty non-conventional items, right? So I'm filtering by customer and time, but you may want to filter by custom fields, for instance. Something you could do, you could chart by custom fields. We pride ourselves on having the ability to get to any data item in QuickBooks and give you the ability to report on it. And as we go through this, I think you'll see we've done I hope you'll see we've done a pretty good job. Now, this is a simple dashboard in and of itself. That's kind of nifty. Now let's do some more interesting things. The first thing I want to do is I want to change this to a stacked bar chart. All right, so now I'm looking at a different report type. And there's lots of report types that we could change to here. I could go to a grid. All right, now I'm looking at, this is a grid, right? This is something I could say export to Excel, And this will show up as a spreadsheet in Excel. These are individual cells, and I could go ahead and export this and use it if that's what I wanted to do. I could change it to a simple pie chart. There's a bunch of things I could do, but I'm going to leave it as a stacked bar chart. So that particular item here, if I like this report, I could save it. If I hit Save Report, right, it recognizes I was working on that report. I could save this off and have a new report type that I could then redeploy to a dashboard. This is still all end-user functionality, so end users can create their own reporting as they need to based on what they're looking at. And it makes for a very fluid environment. So if you're doing reporting and you're a line manager, for instance, and you see something interesting, you could create a report, send it off to somebody, say, let's take a look at this. They can log into the dashboard, see the same thing you're looking at. And you collaborate on that information. Very different from a lot of the other reporting products out there. And some other things that we can do. We can have a couple of, well, we do have a couple of different features I think you'll find interesting. The first one is the decomposition tree. So I'm going to look at third quarter revenue. And now this is time-based revenue. This is not financial revenue. So this is the revenue that the time reporting says we should have billed. If you look at financial revenue, you'll see it's very different. But we could see that $35,000 was for Deborah Wood. So I'm going to start with some simple, sort of interesting things. The first thing I want to do is go say, well, let's see who we billed to. So I could see that we billed the Weisinger Optometry and Freeman Supply Company. And this is kind of interesting data, but you could pull this from QuickBooks. Let's do something that maybe you can't pull from QuickBooks. Why don't we look at this by city? So now I'm looking at revenue by city, right? And there was 3 cities here, and perhaps I'm interested in Bayshore. Let's say I look at Bayshore and I'm interested in which items that we billed to, right? Now I see that at management consulting was one of the items we billed to. I could take this and I could pull it back down to customer if I wanted to, right? Let's go back to customer. And now I could see that Weisinger Optometry was the majority of that revenue. About half of it, I guess, a little less. Give me just a second. I'm sorry. My headset is collapsing. And I've drained the battery this morning already. And not right now. Give me just a moment, if you would. Is everybody there? Can you hear me? Kev?
Yeah, I can hear you. This is Joy.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. All right, I had to put on my other headset. I actually have 2 of them because I kill the battery in one often. So back to this. This decomposition tree is pretty interesting, right? I can also come out here and I could do I could say, let me come back here and say, you know what? I want to look at this by the day of the week. So now what I'm looking at is revenue generated by the day of the week for that quarter. So day 1 is Sunday, and day 7 is Saturday. And you can see this person worked pretty much every day. But on Monday, day 2, they're slackers, right? 200 billable hours for the entire quarter. So apparently, they'd rather work the weekend than Monday. Very interesting things. I can then, of course, take this and apply it and say, for this particular day, which this is Tuesday, why don't we go ahead and look and see where we actually did the work, right? And I could see that in general on Tuesday I went to Freeman Supply Company. So the decomposition tree that we offer with this works from any chart, but it allows you to go from a sort of macro overview of what's going on all the way down to a very detailed analytical view. All of this is available via the internet so that you can connect from anywhere and do this. For the CPAs, the customers where they're virtual CFOs and they want to work with their client, if they're traveling, even if they're on vacation, they need to do this, they can. And this just works. Now, there's another option that we have. You'll notice here in April, I'm going to go back and look at this and say, this is non-billable time. 80% of the time was non-billable in April. Well, maybe I want to look at this, but I don't want to do a decomposition tree, right? I might just say, I want to look at it. So if I hit show details, this is every transaction that makes up that particular number. All the non-billable time is generated here, and this is each entry. And what you get here is you get a service date. This is transaction and service date is the same thing, right? Service date is the date that it happened. Transaction date is the date that QuickBooks recognizes the transaction. So there's one and the same when you're looking at time. But what we notice is there's a lot of customers here that were non-billable, right? This is interesting information. I might say, let's export this to Excel, right? And give it a second. Where'd it go? There it is. It's right there. So, and then let's sort this by. Actually, let's just put in a. Right. Well, Excel not cooperating with me. I could sort this. I can do quite a bit.
Yeah, you need to enable editing.
Yeah, no, it's Excel because I opened it twice. Right? Excel is picky about that sort of thing. Now it will let me enable editing.
Sorry to interrupt, but is it not sortable in that limbo screenshot between
I don't know.
EssentialCFO and
Oh, no. I don't know. Let's go look. It's the first time I've ever been asked that question.
Because if you could sort it there, you could at least see, let's say you wanted to sort it by vendor name and just see, you know, or whatever. I didn't know if you could click on one of those titles and if it would do anything.
No, no, this won't let you sort. This generates the transaction, then you have to blow it out to Excel. But here I can do, you know, the very simple thing. And I've never actually, I always love doing this. I've never actually done this on this particular item. I want to, but I'm going to build a pivot table around this, and I want to see how much of this. No, that's not the one I want. There it is. I want to see how many hours. Interesting. Right. So 100 of the. So these guys right here are ripping us off. There's a problem. Right. 244 hours that were non-billable for a customer out of 358. That's a problem. I might buy these two, 6 and 8, right? Okay, we're doing a little marketing, prospecting, giving away some stuff. 244 hours, somebody screwed up. So, very interesting, right? The concept here was when I was a CFO. I was a CFO for a construction company and a couple other companies as well. One of the problems I always had with reporting was that it was either you started with some sort of mapping product, right? Okay, you generate a chart of accounts or some sort of trial balance, and then you upload it, which doesn't help me much. Or it's very restrictive in terms of what it will show me. And neither of those worked for me. What I wanted personally was I wanted the ability to generate any report that I thought I needed and then get down to a transaction level. Because now I can start to work and fix the problem. I know there's an issue here, right? When we come back here, if I come in and look at this, I can see that there is a lot of stuff going on, right? I can even hear this is a pivot table. This is traditional Excel functionality. We'll come back to this. But I can then drop this in here and say, Jonathan Graham is clearly the issue, right? I mean, we got two problems here, right? I can also do something like this. And this is all analytical. I could do the same thing on the web. I just happen to do it in Excel. Very interesting stuff. And it allows me, it enables me to fix the problem, which is really what I was after. When I'm doing reporting, when I'm doing dashboard work, I want to be able to fix the problem. Not just look and say, okay, I know there's an issue here, but now what do I do? Another guiding principle was if you're a manager, line manager, cost center manager, class manager, however you do it, you need to be able to log in and look at the data you need to look at without, while knowing that whatever you do to move that data will move the needle on all of the dashboards. So from CEO to line manager using the same dashboard. It's just which slices of data are you looking at? And this product will do all of that. Now, we have two things that drive this. Now that you've kind of got a sense of what the dashboards look like, we have two things. There's reports and dashboards. Now, as you've seen, you can maneuver reports however you want. So when I come in here, we start people out with a series of reports. These reports are designed to just be sort of basic, generic reports. We'll get to the report designer later where you can do quite a bit more. But these are fairly functional on their own right. If I come into this report right here, you can see this is a very basic income statement, right? Okay, great. I'm going to turn this particular report into this grid into a chart that I think would be usable. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start drilling in. And what you see here is I'm drilling into the chart of accounts. I'm interested in SG&A expense right here. So I'm just going to keep SG&A expense, and I want to look at it by year, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter out the empty columns. So now I'm looking at SG&A expense year, all right? Now what I'll do is I'll get rid of this, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a line chart, right? I now have SG&A by year. This report actually could be useful for somebody, right? So imagine, for instance, if I wanted to look at SG&A by year and I was a line manager. Well, when I looked at this, I would just see my line manager information, the classes or whatever I'm responsible for. Sort of gives you the ability to build a report that took me less than a minute. For somebody who's not quite as familiar with the system, it might take a little longer, but not much. And I can just save this report right here. If I hit Save Report, and I put this under, right, I'll put it under a folder called SG&A Reports for Clients, and I'll call this the SG&A Yearly Report. And then this is SG&A Reporting for Planning, right? If I hit Save Report, and then come back here and return to the home site, I got to find it. It's in here. There it is. There's our report, right? We saved it. Now I could delete it. I could copy it to another site if I wanted to. If I'm a CPA customer instead of an individual customer, and I have a series of customers that I'm managing, I can copy it over. Here I can share it with people so that they can see it, right? Very simple, easy to do, but I just built that report. And I could just come out here to a dashboard. A dashboard is simply a collection of filters and reports. So here, what we end up with is if I click on this employee performance, this is the home page. This is just the simple dashboard we were looking at. I could add that SG&A report here, tie it to this time period, and maybe add the vendor, the employees up here so that I could look at it that way, right? And all of this is available, all this functionality is available to the end user, right? If the customer so desires that the end users can do this themselves, build their own dashboard, same data source. So you eliminate those meetings. I don't know if you've ever been there, where everybody gets into a room and starts arguing about numbers. Well, my numbers are correct. No, these numbers are correct. This is the same data source, so it's pretty easy to figure out what happened and how you got to that number. It just eliminates those arguments. So from a reporting standpoint alone, this should get most people about 80% of the way there. But there's still some things that need to be taken care of. The first one is for projects. We have 4 different ways we report. So we report financial information. We report sales information. We report purchasing information. Now, financial information is traditional income statement, balance sheet type information down on a transaction level, plus cash flow information, right? So you could generate a cash flow statement. If you'd like to see that, I'll show you. It's pretty easy. Sales information is all sales information that's account agnostic. So if you have customers that sell deferred revenue type products, sales information would tell you total sales, not total revenue. It also includes information on receivables, so you can do an aging. sales orders, if somebody uses sales orders, and time reporting, which is what we're looking at here. The purchasing information is all of the purchasing information that's account agnostic. So if you have buy stuff that goes asset and expense, as you know, it's kind of tough to add all that up in QuickBooks. This just sums it all together for you. It also gives you purchase order information, which is unusual, right? Purchase order reporting and stuff, and inventory information, which is very useful, along with payables information. So if you have AP and you want to manage that, it's out there. The last product we have is for project reporting. Now, project reporting was a problem for us because QuickBooks is so pathetic at estimates. It's really bad. And if you've ever done an estimate in QuickBooks, what happens is you generate an estimate, and it's a customer-based estimate, so that I can give them an estimate to say, here's what you're going to be billed. But there's no easy way to track the cost for that estimate. What QuickBooks does is it says, I'm going to take the average cost that I'm tracking for this and apply it to the item, and that'll be your cost. Well, we know that that may or may not be the case depending on the product. So we built an estimate module, right? We had to in order to give ourselves the ability to report the way we wanted to. And first thing we did was we let you estimate by account or item. Sometimes QuickBooks requires you to estimate by item, but you may not want to. You may have something like mileage or whatever. You may have an account where you have overhead that you want to assign to this, and you have to set up an item to manage all that, and it's kind of a pain. So we allowed that by item. And then the other thing we did, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple here so you can see, in addition to allowing you to manage by account, should you desire it, is we let you break out separate quantity, cost, and revenue. So if you have special deals for this particular project, or you're charging them more, or it's going to cost more for some reason, you can track it here. And this is important. If you're doing project-based accounting, whether it be a traditional construction accounting or something internally where you just want to track a project, see how much time you're spending with it, maybe a non-revenue generating project, maybe you have a client that does development work, software development, something near and dear to my heart, where you want to track projects internally. That's where this comes in. The other thing we did, and we didn't do this because we want to compete, but it just seemed like an easy thing to add, is we gave the ability to look at a service date and a transaction date. Now the difference is the service date gives you the ability to sort of build a project plan, because as you have things come in and are done, right? Notice I have vendor here. I could say, for instance, I have some concrete work that needs to be done. I know it's going to be done by this vendor. I expect it to be done on this date. This is the date I expect the invoice, and here's what I expect it to cost. You could start to do sort of variance analysis based on, does the accounting data say the project's behind, rather than does the project manager say the project's behind, right? Very different. And it gives you a control point, because if the project manager comes to you and says, don't worry, everything's on task, but you don't have any of the invoices, nothing seems to be done, it tells you something, right? And who would ever say a project manager would lie about the state of a project, right? And so clearly they would never do that. But if they did, it sort of helps you identify that. Now, something else that we've done that needed to be completed, and this, we offer this as a construction module, but it works for everything. We had a customer come to us and said, we like the estimates, this all works, but you need to include purchase orders. So we built a module that allows for a very simple workflow routing of purchase orders, right? Put in, this is a requisition. You can add it, whatever you want, right? You can requisition by item, because it does have to be by item. QuickBooks only allows POs by item. And you can key in a PO and then submit it, and it will route around and for approval, right? So you can build approval chains. Accounting's not involved in that. Once the chain is set up, once it's submitted, it goes to the appropriate person for approval. Once it's approved, an email is generated back to the requisitioner that says, here's your purchase order. There's no more accounting involvement in POs. So no more arguing that I can't get a PO because accounting's not in. This works 24/7, right? You can always get a PO. And where this came in handy was when you're looking at a a construction project, and there's always a construction guy who will tell you, we can't wait. It's got to be done now. Now, I have no idea how the emergency always seems to happen, but it does. This allows them, you can absolutely enforce the no PO, no pay rule at this point, because there's no excuse. They can get one within 15 seconds if they so need to. If their boss is standing next to them, they submit the request, he approves it, they get the email back, you're done. Right? Very easy. So the customer asked us for that. An ancillary to that is right here. Is an item receipt. So three-way match, traditional accounting, right? You have the purchase order that gets submitted. You have the invoice from the vendor when they say they're done. And then the validation is the item receipt that says this is how much of this we got. And, you know, QuickBooks, you can do an item receipt, but normally it's an accountant that does it. So they never get used, right? And what happens is you end up with timing issues. You get an invoice. You got to try to accrue for stuff. The construction accounting accounts are off, and you don't know how you're doing against a particular project. This short circuits all that, right? They just can go enter an item receipt for an open PO and say, yes, I got this, close the PO. And you're done, right? It'll show up in the project reporting. It'll map against the estimated items. And what you have is basically a self-contained project accounting system for construction or anybody who does that. And it's a wonderful internal control mechanism. A lot of the construction companies we've worked with, especially the smaller ones, will always tell you they can't do POs. And it's just short circuits that. So this is one of the enhancements we had to do. Now, the POs will be written to QuickBooks, and so will the item receipts. But the processing around purchase orders is outside of QuickBooks. And the estimates are not written to QuickBooks just because there's no easy way to do it. So just the sort of a structural discussion about how that works. Now, those are two things that we worked on that needed to be done. The next thing that we worked on that needed to be done was budgeting. And what we did for budgeting was we discussed this. There's just no easy way to do this. You can try and build a budgeting tool that people think they can use, and I just couldn't figure out a way to do it. As a CFO, when I worked on budgeting, I was always particular about that, right? I wanted to budget a certain way. I didn't want to have, I didn't want to be constrained. So what we did was we built a process that will generate spreadsheets that you're used to seeing. So this is an example of one right here. This is the chart of account. This is actually class cost. That's the account they had, right? So what we did was we said we want to see by account, by class, and by item what we expect to see. Right, and this one makes quite a bit of sense right here, right? So I'm actually looking at how many hours and how much do you think it will cost for unbillable time. So that is actually an interesting question and something you would probably want to budget for if you were a time-based organization, because if people are going over budget on unbilled time, something you'd want to know. And what happens is after you fill this out, and you can budget both by quantity here, right, and amount. After you fill this out, we simply re-upload it, and it'll process in along with your data so that you can see how you're doing, right? You could look and do budget analysis. Now, we do more than one budget because clearly you're going to have probably best, worst, and most likely case budgets. You may have a series of budgets throughout the year. You may have a rolling 12-month budget. All that is supported. And the idea here being that you'll be able to generate the budget spreadsheet you need, fill them out, and then resubmit them. You can generate them separately, right? If I wanted to, I could have done this by class and said, I want to do one spreadsheet for Natalie, one for Deborah, and one for Jonathan, right? And send it to each of them and said, fill this out, which is really what you need to do for a budget, right? You get it to the budget owner and say, give us your budget. They send it back. You cut 20% off. Tell them no way. They sandbag. It's just, I mean, it's budgeting, right? So this is another product that we have. This QuickBooks does not make the budget module available to anybody. It's probably because it's so bad. So as a result, the budgets are not stored in QuickBooks. So those three areas, this is all the end-user-based information on the website. The end users can be allowed to manage any of this, right? They can get in and play with it. Now, as a customer, somebody who manages the site, there's some other things we can do. Right? You can manage navigation. Now what this does is this controls these tabs up here. And you can see that I've inactivated some, right? So like the users, I made it inactive. If I need to go manage my users, I don't need it to be up here, because if it's up here, somebody else might see it, maybe, and be interested in messing with it. So there's some things I can do here. I can change out this logo here. It doesn't have to say Essential CFO. This stays, but you can change this out, put your own corporate logo here. We can make any page the home page. So however you'd like to do that, you can. But the big item here is the dashboard designer. And what that is this particular product right here. Now, what you're looking at is a piece of software that gets installed onto your local machine, but connects to the Essential CFO website. And this is all of the information that's on the website. So you'll remember there's a financial report, right? There's project-based information. There was a purchase report discussion. Here's all the filters. This allows you to create any particular item you'd like. So here, I created a report. This is a simple revenue report, right? If I want to create a report, I could come in here, I could say new report, and I'll make an analytical chart. And I'm going to work off the same financial information. And what I'm going to do now, you'll see over here that there's something called a measure group. There's just hundreds of them, lots of measures, right? I can give you just the actual amount. I can give you the quarter-to-date amount going back 5 or 6 quarters, including this quarter, year-to-date going back the same amount of time. This is everything. So if you're doing balance sheet work, this might be useful here. This is a total of all the activity over that time period. There's also cash flow-based information like that. Now, here, though, I'm going to work with a simple report by class, right? So now you're going to get a big blue box, which is pretty exciting. But I'm going to start carving this box up now, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say I want to see SG&A expense. And I want to see it by, let's go and we'll start here, right? And I'm going to double click and I want to go into 2013. So this is SG&A expense, right, by quarter. And if now what I'm looking at is SG&A expense by quarter or by class, right? And I can filter a few things out of here. So now I have kind of a useful report. If I save this report, if I come out here and I say, let's call this quarterly SG&A report, and hit save. Oops. And then come out here to reports. What you're going to see is you're going to see that I've created, there's our quarterly SG&A report. It's just available, right? Now what this allows us to do is build our own reports, and this is really important. The customers have intellectual ownership over what they build. So as a customer, if I build a series of reports and my end users are different companies, if I'm a CPA as the customer and the end user is a different company, and that end user comes directly to Essential CFO and says, hey, listen, I don't like my CPA anymore, but I want to use my dashboard, so I just want to move and create my own. They can't do it, right? This is intellectual property of the customer. So I'll give them a dashboard, but it'll just have all the basic reports in it, and I'll have to rebuild everything, right? So this is more of a platform than just a product. There's a revenue stream here for people who are interested in doing reporting products or projects for their clients. And it's a recurring stream. So if you think about it, you saw how long it took me to build that report. It wasn't long. Trust me when I say you can do that yourself. It won't take long, and you'll be pretty good at it. Let's say it takes 10 minutes to build a report. It took me about a minute. Let's say it takes 10 times that 10 minutes. If you could build 6 reports an hour, you could charge $150 a report per client. So that's $900 an hour if all they're doing is building reports and it takes 10 minutes of a report. Staff members working at $900 an hour is a pretty good deal. And don't forget, you could charge the same $150 for a report you've already developed. There's no saying you have to give it away. So, as you go through this, there's just a myriad of revenue opportunities for people. The big one is going to be, as a CPA, you can generate a sort of a dashboard that works as like a vertical law firm. So I go out and I sell law firms, and I specialize in law firms, and I have a dashboard that works for them. It's a differentiator besides just being myself, right? It gives me a point of contact. So it's one thing that we can do here. Now, a couple other things we can do here. I could save this particular workspace right here as a file. And then on another client, I could connect and import this file, right? So I don't even have to keep all the reports necessarily out on the EssentialCFO server if I don't want to, right? They might be scattered across, but I could build them into one workspace or multiple workspaces and just save them on my own local machine. Of course, they're always available on EssentialCFO depending on how you want to deal with it, but it's an interesting option. The other thing I can do here, and this is only available, this is customer only, I can build my own KPIs. Now, this is really unique. Most of the time when people use KPIs, it's sort of a standard like gross margin percentage of the KPI. Here, I could build a KPI that says I want to see non-billable time by vendor. That's what I want to do. That's a KPI that not everybody would be interested in, but you could build it yourself. You might say I want to see non-billable time by vendor and compare it to what I budgeted and then see how I'm doing, right? Is it red, yellow, or green? So building your own KPIs is very valuable, and this is going to be particularly so when you think in terms of deploying the dashboard to your individual clients, because this is something that they just physically can't do. This is customer level. You can't build your own KPI from the website. I can combine KPIs into a scorecard, and I could put 6 or 7 KPIs on a scorecard and then make it perhaps data aware, and maybe I make it organizationally aware. And class, I can change the class and look at the scorecard. When you do that kind of work, that's all customer-based. The end users can't do that. You can also build your own dashboard here if that's what you wanted to do. This is a little different. There's only certain types of dashboards available on the website. This allows you to do multiple things, right? You can do different layouts that you just can't do on the website. So this report add-in product right here is pretty slick, and it allows you to do quite a bit of work that you just couldn't do anywhere else. This is all yours. There's probably 6 or 7 things that I haven't covered here. We just don't have time, but this is a unique feature of EssentialCFO that I've not seen anywhere else. Now, the last thing I want to show you is, I think, yeah, this is it. This is an Excel interface, a pivot table. And if you're familiar with pivot tables, we were playing with one earlier. What I've done is I've connected to the financial information here, right? And you may recognize this as we go through. And what I'm doing is I'm building a very simple balance sheet, all right? So now I have a simple balance sheet here, all right? And by month, right? This is activity, but I can start to drill in. Now, this is the same data we've been working with. You may recognize it. But it is in an Excel format, and where we use this is with customers who have particular questions or are Excel savvy. We'll allow them to do this. This is at the customer's discretion. So if an end user wants access to this and the customer says, no, it doesn't have it. The customer says, yes, it's fine. CPA may use this to do ad hoc analysis. If a client calls them up and says, hey, I have a question for you. Can you help me out here? This gives you the ability to sort of come out and drill around. All 4 reporting environments are available: the financial, sales, purchases, and projects. So you can drill on anything, right? And as you look through here, you see there's some interesting things available. Move up here, right? So, for instance, in the customer, you can see here's the custom fields, right? So you could do reporting on custom fields. This is available in either place. But this is an interesting point where, as you work through and you do these sorts of things, you have an opportunity to do reporting you simply can't do out of QuickBooks, and make it it's reusable, which is unusual, right? You don't have to work hard to move it around. So probably the last thing I'll show you real quick, because we're right at about an hour, is this works the same as the web as well, in that you can look here, right? This is just the contents of that account. This is all the transactional information, and you'll notice we support native currency, right? And we have a lot of different things that we can tell you about this. This is each actual transaction, right? As you come out here, there's an actual description in here that will tell you exactly what this was. It's right here, right? It just tells you the reference, the document reference number. Just very interesting things that you can do in Excel or on the web. So with that, I think we hit just about an hour. I usually like to leave just a few minutes for questions. Let me just see. Are there any questions?
I have about 1,000. I don't know if
Good.
I'm on or not.
I can hear you. Hello?
Now can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, this is Joy. So from the bookkeeper CPA standpoint, let me start off by saying I'm trying to wrap my head around probably a big picture thing that I don't need to understand the details of, but being the sort of owner of the QuickBooks file, is all of this data constantly pulling from the actual QuickBooks database, or is it uploaded daily to this? That it's because playing with all of this, is it constantly updated? How does that work? And I don't mean the internals of how your program works. I'm just trying to understand what snapshot of data we're looking at.
So we have a little. This is an SDK-based integration, because the IPP is bad, if you know what that is. The IPP doesn't provide this level of information. So it's an SDK connection, so you have to install a little piece of software wherever the QuickBooks data file resides. There's no restriction. If you've got somebody who's got 50 clients and half are on a hosted server and the other half are on client premises, but you work all 50, you can install this on wherever it is. And there is a synchronization process, right? You just go out and synchronize. You hit start, and what it does is it pulls the information it needs. And the way it works is this: the initial synchronization can take a while. We've had them take up to 30 hours, depending on how big the file is.
Right.
When you get close to a gig, to pull that data across will take 30, 35 hours. It just will.
Sure.
Now, once you've done that, it's incremental. So then it's just a question of how often you refresh. We have a scheduler. If you look here, I could schedule any of these, right, by day, week, or month. More than daily is kind of a problem. Accountants get really uppity if you're updating midday, because they start getting questions, right? Yeah. And so we didn't make it any more than daily. You can always refresh it.
Like
right?
If they say, we just entered a bunch of stuff, we need you to pull some things, do a refresh,
right.
and then work.
Right. And then it just runs.
Does it
and
cause
magically
any, if they're on a server, does it cause any lag or interruption of their work if you happen to do it? You know, I would assume you could set it up to do it every night for all your clients at midnight.
Right.
Again, though, what if the customer is on site and they turn off their computer and leave for the day? You can't upload, you can't sync
right.
unless they're on.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So
the
QuickBooks
like
has to be
in each individual computer.
Right. QuickBooks has to be open.
Okay.
The data file doesn't have to be open, but QuickBooks has to be open, and the computer has to be turned on. Correct.
And then the next question leads me to, you know, understanding towards the end of that you were talking about, for example, report building as a revenue stream, and the CPA or myself being a bookkeeper, kind of owning and controlling this account.
Mm-hmm.
Is there the users, when you touched on the users, would I be able to set up users for all the different people on my company list to access their data after I've built reports for them so that they could play and do these things as well?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so they don't buy
Actually,
into seats, or they could create their own account, and I could go into their
right.
account and work on their data.
Right. So
okay.
Each one of these, this right here, this is a company. So you'll see here I have a thing called subsites, right? So the sample consulting file is here. So think of it in terms of a tree. And underneath the sample consulting file, which is my company, all right, I'm managing it from here. I also have sample inventory in the sample nonprofit file. These are separate entities. So if I go into sample inventory, this is a different report structure. Notice subsite's gone, right? Notice I don't have the home page isn't the same. It's reports here. It's not that time dashboard, right? This is a completely separate area. And
that would be what
the user.
That would be what that company sees when they log in.
Right. Right.
Okay. That wraps my
I
head a little bit more around all the different options that you have from a, like you were saying, buy and use for their customers or end user, and you can do both from within one.
Right.
Okay.
So as a customer, you could set it up, but every company has its own reporting site. There's nothing shared. Everything is completely separate. I would be uncomfortable if things were shared, right, as a CFO.
Absolutely, and that's where my mind was trying to figure it out for one company, and then realizing that you were talking about having multiple people at sort of in one place where you as the driver can edit things and move things around.
Right. Right. So there's a couple things I didn't get to show you. It's kind of hard to do, but there's an attribute-based security. So you could come in here, for instance, and say, let me go back up here and see if I can.
That was my next question, is if you're going to open it up to, let's say you've got company, Joe's boxing company, and you've got the CFO wants to come in and log in sometimes, and then the line manager wants to come in and look at his reports. Did they each have individual logins and have that attribute level security?
Yes. So what happens is they have their own logins, right? And this right here, I'm just putting the finishing touches on it right now, but see there's 3 users here, right?
Okay.
So SAM2 is going to be, right now we just hooked it to the financials. It'll be hooked to all 4. And I'm going to go look at class. So Sam can just see these 2 classes. That's it.
Okay.
You have the ability, so the default is they can see everything, right? When you set up the user, you have to go configure the security for them, because the vast majority of our users are going to want to see everything, right? We're going to have a smaller percentage where you're going to want to restrict like this, but you can restrict individual classes. Right now, we're targeting 4 dimensions to be restricted, which will be class, which is an obvious one. The other ones are sales rep, right? So you want to restrict the sales rep to looking at only what the sales rep has generated, right? And then customer type and vendor type. So, and fifth one is job type. So if you set up customer, vendor, or job types, you could say, you know what? Job type mipe be how do you classify project manager, right? That's how you determine who the project manager is. So when I log in, I only see my projects because I'm tied to my job type.
Okay. And that's all based on each individual customer's profile on
right. Right. Every one of these things is
all
driven
based
by
on the field that's already in QuickBooks, except for when you said customizing your fields to create all these different reports that QuickBooks can't do. Because I'm thinking of it from the point of view of, for 15 years I've learned the background of the parameters and the setup and the filters of QuickBooks, so that when a customer, one of my clients, comes to me and says, all right, I need a report that shows me so-and-so by XY columns, and I need to see it by customer and by job or whatever. You can pick 100 things they want to see. I can show them each of those things. Obviously, QuickBooks limiting it, I could show them 15 different things on 15 different reports. What this thing obviously does is it shows me a much more interactive, those 15 things sort of all in one place that you can drill down to and back out. So that's where I was curious about where the data is coming from. So when you're syncing the other part, obviously that's coming out into this Essential CFO world. What about the stuff that goes back? I know you mentioned that POs, when you set them up on the requisition area, those go back. What else can go back? And that leads me to those estimates. When you do get an estimate together, for example, in QuickBooks now, you get the estimate together and then you can convert it to an invoice when the customer accepts or approves.
Right.
Can I send those estimates back?
We have the functionality to do that. We just haven't implemented it yet. Because the client that we did this for, and it was one client who came to us. They were an oil and gas company, and They were a mess. They didn't have any internal control, so we said, listen, we're going to help you with this, but we'll do it slowly. So yes, you could send the estimates back. One of the problems is that only where there's revenue and only where there's items will go back.
Right.
Right.
Because it's not going to create. It won't do, because I've seen some, a lot of proprietary softwares that claim that it works with QuickBooks. For example, there was one on a web development company. They built websites. They were using Autotask. Are you familiar with that at all?
No.
It was a dashboard, project management, resource management, customized software, and it claimed that it was integrated with QuickBooks. But when it went back, if you missed one letter, it created a new account and a new sub-account. And I'm talking chart of accounts level stuff. It was a mess, total mess, because there was 15 people developing 15 different projects. We had all this billable time. It was just a nightmare. So, my from a bookkeeping standpoint is I don't want a lot going back unless that helps.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And even if it does go back, if it doesn't exist, it won't create it.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. I run GLs, right, when I was CFO. I mean, that's one of the less, it's not a highly, that's not the position people think of when they're going to be a CFO, right? They're thinking high levels of strategy stuff. But running the GL is like bread and butter for a CFO, and you're right. When people are creating nasty and making your life difficult, it stinks. It's no fun. So we work with the list ID, if you know what that is. If you worked with QuickBooks long enough, you probably heard it.
I know the term. I haven't had a lot of experience with it.
So what the list ID does is the list ID is it's actually what QuickBooks uses to track the item. So in an account, when you type and create an account, it creates a list ID, and the name of the account is just the alias for the list ID. So
I know what you mean by that. It's in the database,
right.
like access.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. So we work with the list ID on that stuff. So you won't see when it comes back. It won't.
Idea. If I could just jump around, because now my head, like I said, is starting to wrap around how all this is working. Does this work with any version of QuickBooks? And does it an older version of QuickBooks? Obviously, you want to stay within that 3 years for clients that are, not upgrading every year. But does any version of QuickBooks, is it simply limited by the data in their QuickBooks?
Right, it is. I've run it all the way back to, I think, 11.
Okay, so, I do have an old 09, so we'll have to drag them into this century.
It might still work with that because it's the SDK version that drives it. I think it's the SDK version now is 11 or 12, something like that. And if they're using a version so old that the SDK version doesn't apply, then it'll blow up.
Gotcha.
Right? But it should work around Canadian and UK-based QuickBooks too.
And then also, how can it connect with online? Because I know that's, and Mac versions, I know those are both a little different. And I work with both, and they're so different in the environment, but I don't know about the Mac background as far as database.
The Mac, no. Unfortunately, the Mac version doesn't work at all. There's a tough market for that one.
The Mac version of QuickBooks, I would have to say, excuse me, but doesn't work very well either.
Yeah.
So that's been a nightmare for my clients.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and we were coding, and they asked me. They said, "Well, do you want to go do the Mac code?"
It just gives me chills when I hear it. Yeah, the idea of that. Online works.
So we're working on the online one. The problem with the online version is it's the IPP, and the IPP is not fully functional. I don't know if they've told you that or not, but you know how they have that web connector with QuickBooks now?
No.
Have you seen that? So, if next time you boot up QuickBooks, look in the system tray, and there'll be this little thing that'll say QuickBooks Web Connector, right? And what that is that's how the IPP works. And the way that works is that it says, okay, I'm going to create a instance for you in the online world, and I'm going to pull your data and I'm going to make it available. So when you sign up for an app that supports online or the desktop version that says online, it uses this. But the IPP is like a quarter of the SDK. So the functions in the SDK don't exist in the IPP. So the IPP only works for QBO. For desktop, the IPP is pathetic.
Okay.
And so what we're doing is working through how we would support QBO directly, and we envision having that done in June.
Okay. And
So,
just curiosity, I hadn't read much on the EssentialCFO website. How long has this actually been out and up and running at this level?
The first clients came online in 2009 in the version 0 dashboard.
Okay.
And this particular incantation has been about 2 years, 2.5. So
Okay.
we've had, we're probably on version 2.2 right now.
Cool.
So the very first version, version 0, was a limited proof of concept, and I was virtual CFO. That's where this came from. I was CFO for probably 6 or 7 companies, and they were all asking me for stuff, and they didn't want to pay for it, right? I don't know if you've been through this, but they'll be like, I need this report. You'll generate it. They'll say, this is great. I love it. You bill them a few months for it, and then they start calling you up going, why am I paying so much for generating Excel reports? Right?
Right.
Yeah, ingrates, right? They don't understand time costs money. So they were giving me a hard time about this. I'm not doing it for free. So we started working on developing a way to deliver the information, the same information repeatedly. And the early versions of this were pretty funny because I had to go through and hack apart. I had to go through and hack apart the back end. And it was not fun. It took me about 1.5 years. If you've ever looked at the back end of QuickBooks, it doesn't look like a traditional ERP system. It looks like a gaseous cloud, right?
No, I haven't, but I totally understand what you're saying. I wouldn't go into the programming side of things. Because you kind of scramble my brain when, I mean, I can understand just enough of that to get myself in trouble. So the couple of just basic end user questions that are popping through in my mind, and I'm sure as I, move, let all this sort of gel over the next few hours, I'm sure I'll come up with some other questions. Does the reporting print, is it just like web printing where you just hit print in your browser and it
You could. So this is designed to be interactive, but let me show you a few things you can do, right? Let me go to the dashboard. Go here. So the first thing you can do if you really want to print it, because we were a little interested in how we do this. I'm just going to blow this out to PowerPoint, right? And this is the first thing I do to tell people to print, because this is designed to be interactive, right? This is designed to be more of a day-to-day management tool, right?
Yeah.
Not the traditional financial sort of,
Put it in the book.
the first,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So let me see if I can grab this. Anyway, this is me not knowing how to operate.
So you could also, I could also do screenshots and dump them in Excel. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it and size it.
Right. So this right here, though, is just a simple, right? So if I come here and I
see what it did. Yeah. Cuts that off.
There you go. Right. If I change this, it's just a simple report. I could do it in Excel, right? If I came back here to this, I could just paste. There's my chart.
Does it have any, I'm jumping around, but you're answering my questions so fast, and I'm coming up with the next one, and I'll stop in a few minutes. Does there any capability for macro, like if, let's say, in general, a group, let's say a board, or a 3 or 4 equal owners in a company want to kind of look at the same things and have a weekly, monthly, quarterly discussion. Is there like a report set that you could just have it run each time, or do you just keep those in one folder of your memorized and just run them, and then you get on, everybody's together looking at it like we are looking at GoToMeeting? Can everybody log in at the same time and talk and look at the same things?
Yes, you could do that.
And
so
separately, they would be able to, like, okay, I know I'm going to have a budget meeting with my partners tomorrow. I could go and log in the evening and go through everything.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
Right. Can you guys hold on just a quick second?
Yeah.
sell it over and over and over again. Huh?
Thanks. Sorry. We had to make a decision when we did this. The big decision was, how do you do this? Do you do this for more financial purposes, which is traditional income statement, balance sheet reporting, one point in time, print it, or do you want to do it so that it's a little more fluid? We went with the fluid model.
Yeah, no, and I agree, because really, QuickBooks can do all of it and memorize reports and dump them out for into financials as needed.
Right.
Look traditional, and that's where this takes it well beyond traditional in the sense of really looking at things the way each individual company wants to and needs to, and a lot of them don't even know they need it yet, which is cool.
Right. Right.
That brings me to, just in general, can you give me a sort of a snapshot of pricing? And I'm thinking of it not only in terms of my clients right off the bat. I've already listed 3 or 4 people I know of that might be interested in it. Do you take on companies directly, or is this something you could give me an idea of pricing? Do you buy seats for each of your users, or do you buy blocks of users? How does that work?
Well, Kev actually just worked all that up. Kev, are you out there? All right, he's busy. Well, what we do is we charge by the data file and then the number of users per data file, right?
Okay.
And then the functionality that you want for the data file. And it's different for you than for your client, right? So if your client were to come to me, it would look different than if you did.
Sure.
And right now, the rough costs are, we try to target 4 to 5 users depending on how it's set up.
Yep.
That generally doesn't include you.
Right.
And you are
4 to 5
separate.
users per data file.
I'm sorry?
4 to 5 users per data file?
Yeah, exactly. 4 to 5.
Okay.
We try to make it so that the users aren't the real. We have to limit the users. We have to, because people would have 60 billion of them.
Oh, yeah.
We want to make it so that you can generally operate without having to. It's not a per user charge. That's not what I want people to get hung up on. So,
Gotcha.
additional users are like $2 to $4 a month. I mean, we try to keep it so that you don't overload me. But
generally speaking, that's what your goal is, to keep it to 4 to 5.
File. Yeah.
Right. Or, as you go up, because the data files range from about $100 to about $140 a month, right? But when you get to the 140 level, no, it's just based strictly on how many features you want. Size doesn't matter.
Okay, the other question then can 2 people be in the same database at the same time?
Yeah.
You mean 2 clients?
Yeah, okay, so we have the 3 partners are going to have the financial meeting, and everybody wants to go up the night before to kind of review everything so they're ready for the discussion the next day. They can all be in the database.
On the web, absolutely. On the web, sure.
Gotcha.
There's no restrictions, right?
Gotcha.
The same person can log in multiple times, right? It just doesn't matter. So if they're logged in at their home PC and they're logged in at work, it's not relevant.
Okay.
Obviously, somebody's going to be like, well, that's great. I'll just set up a single user and have everybody use them, and that's fine. That's one of the reasons we didn't want to have user charges.
Like you say, get hung up on the user level. Yeah.
Right. But the other thing is that, right. But the other thing is that if you have all the partners using the same user ID, it's not a big deal. But if you have line managers, they can see everything.
That was my question about security levels. Just like in regular QuickBooks, when you set up users, you can restrict certain sensitive financial things and all that. That's cool. Okay. Well, that gives me an idea, sort of, to let all this just, settle in my mind and think through it.
Well, and so what I would suggest in pricing, right? So we charge for data file. For you, what I would do, and I don't know how you guys do your pricing now, but the way that I generally suggest to accountants and bookkeepers to do their pricing is to try to like when I did CFO services, I did managed services, which was a fixed fee, and then I tried to crash as much as I could, right? So I'd say, okay, I'm going to have you pay me for 10 hours of my time. I'm going to give you a 10% discount. That's my fee to you, and then I'm going to make it so that I only work 4 hours, right?
You can also
That's what I tried to do.
My thoughts going straight to packages, like a bronze level, whatever, silver, gold, platinum, like
Right.
here's different packages, and then you can pre-build sort of templates, and then, you know, obviously that is recurring revenue. That's once you've built it, here's the basics, and then customized after that in hourly chunks or something like that.
And then the way I would suggest you bill is you wrap a fee around, you wrap this in with that fee, charge double, right, and then charge them per activity. So if they ask you to do a special report for them or design a dashboard, set a flat fee, $100, $150, and then train staff, right? Have
if I buy her software, then she can and she can use it. But she doesn't charge us for it.
You know, I'm seeing it from my view, from my level.
From mine.
Well, I'm seeing even for an individual company, you know, you can get all this data, but I would, and I don't mean challenge, but I would be, most of my clients probably wouldn't be able to figure out how to use this, just like they can't figure out how to make a specific report in QuickBooks Go.
Right.
So this is even more
compelling why you can charge for a report.
Yeah. You're giving something really cool, but that doesn't mean they're going to be able to figure it out and use it.
Right. Right. So we didn't design this with your customers in mind. We designed it with you in mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's where I was.
But that's where you were.
Yep.
That's how they are. Right. So you developed the whole thing.
Right. Yep. I was where you are. I was a service provider, outsourced service provider, and I need a way to make money. I want to look good, and I don't want to waste my time. How do you do that, right? And that's what this does. This makes you look good. You can make money, and it's recurring because they got to pay you for it, and it's your intellectual property. Those reports that you saw me create, you create that report, it's your report. Yep. The client comes to me and says, hey, I hate these people, right, whatever. I just want to have my own. That's great, I'll set you up, but I'm not taking your reports with you.
Right.
I can't do that. That's not my intellectual property, right? Now, you know, technically, could I? Yeah. But would I? No way. That's not how the agreements are written. And the idea being that you as the provider need to make money. Yep. Right? And we view ourselves more as a platform than we are just a product.
Yep. Absolutely.
You've seen what we can do.
When you have this in your head as an end product added on to the work that I do in QuickBooks, it can help me develop, for example, a new company I just started with is a property management. They own, they manage properties for homeowners, renters, leases, escrow accounts, all this kind of stuff. If you're starting off with them, you can set up their QuickBooks, their chart of accounts, their classes, the custom fields with this in mind. That's exponential because then you can really tweak their data and pull things, you know, very, very detailed. So
one of the other things that we can do, we haven't, and this will come up with your property manager people, is we can consolidate files. We just haven't. It's not difficult to do. I need a test case to work with to do it. I could try
consolidate files and what? Tell me what you mean by consolidate files.
Well, imagine looking at this data, but having multiple data files consolidated. So somebody who's got 6 or 7 different data files that they use to manage, like they have a data file per property, for instance, or a data file per LLC, and they want to look at a consolidated look at all of their data files.
Okay,
right?
I got you. So you're talking about a company who's keeping separate QuickBooks files.
Right.
I might have one for you because they were one of the clients that I first thought of. They are in construction, and they're having a hard time with estimates, project management, resources, time, all that.
Right.
And they've they're an enterprise, and they've got 3 separate EIN numbers running under the same corporate heading.
And we would be able to consolidate. I just need a test case, right? Yeah. So somebody brings me the test case, I'll do it. The bad news is it's development, right? If you've never been through IT development, it's bleeding edge, right? Yeah. And if stuff's not going to work, it's going to be a pain. The good news is you're going to have access to me. I'm doing it. So it's going to work, right? You're going to get a different view of it than you would normally. It'll be, you know, once a week we can sit down and look at everything and go, yeah, okay, this is working the way we wanted it to, right? You're not paying for it. right? You get access to my time, you're not paying for it.
That's the thing about them is they use QuickBooks on the accounting side, and payroll and job tracking is, of course, ARAP, all the traditionals. And we tried doing, and we are limping through P&L by jobs and the job costing, and that obviously you mentioned it earlier that it's obviously Stone Age. It's you have to, in every expense you have to put in your customer or customer job in order to get it onto an individual job P&L, and it doesn't do much after that. All you have is drilling down one level back into the transaction level, and it's not doing, and that's under purchasing the new QuickBooks Contractor Edition, which is just a different title. You know that. It's pre-made reports that don't do much, but they have gone out now, I think 2 or 3 times over the last 2 or 3 years, and tried to get proprietary software or purchasing contracting software that does not integrate correctly with QuickBooks. They may be a test case for you. If they're interested,
fine to work.
I'll hook you guys up.
Yeah, if they want to do it, I'm going to do it for free. They got to understand I'm developing it as a product, right? It's going to be a consolidation module that I offer. It's easy to do, month, 2 months, I'd be done. But it's going to be bleeding edge. It's going to take some time. But I also have to make sure that I have the time.
I'm doing this for 3 years.
Yeah,
what's 2 months?
They're and they may be. I think they're actually probably a candidate as well for having their main. They have a restoration entity, a handyman entity, and then the corporate entity. And they're on 3 separate files right now. And filing taxes 3 separates, but that doesn't mean that they may not want to look at it in a broader view.
Right. Well, and then what you end up with is fundamentally 4 websites, right? I mean, so not only that, but you have the person responsible for the handyman thing only looking at the handyman data. I mean, it's a further level of security. And inside of handyman, he could even break it down more. So it's easily done, what we're describing. Again, being a platform, we just need a test case. I've had many people say, hey, I want to do this, and nobody wants to be the test case, which tells me they really don't want to do it.
Why would somebody not want a test case? I mean, it's a copy of their data.
It's painful.
What?
It's painful. It's painful. I mean, it's they have to be willing to look at stuff with you and help you figure out what's the best way to do it. And it's, I don't know if you've ever done it. It's like, think of it like one of those calls where they call you up and ask you, how do we do? Right?
Yeah.
I don't mind helping, but if that survey is longer than 5 minutes, I'm like, go away.
I'm done after 2 or 3 questions. Well,
right, I'm done.
If they're willing to do it, this is something that I have worked with them on for the last 2 or 3 years, and I might be able to be a bigger part of that questions to be answered, and then just go to them as needed. It's an idea. I don't know. Let me just run it past, and then if we could talk further about that later, if they're even willing to give me a copy of their data, basically.
Yeah, they'd have to connect, and I need to implement the individual data files as databases, and then we'd go to the conversion and say, okay, how do I consolidate?
Because I think that part of the idea there, and this may be a way you could work it out directly with them, is I think mainly on the 2 servicing companies, not the corporate umbrella company, but the 2 servicing companies could use, very extensively what you already know works and use it directly for their business now.
Right.
And then in trade or however you wanted to offer that to them, they give the test case data with my help. But it's something I can definitely just run it by them, and if they're interested, I can try to connect you guys.
Okay. Absolutely. Let's talk. I'm still looking for the test case, and then the consolidation module will be a month or 2 behind that.
And you'd need to look, too, and see what their data looks like to see if it would even work for your system. I mean, I'm not sure. It will.
If it's in QuickBooks.
Yeah,
if it's in QuickBooks, it will.
QuickBooks. Okay, cool.
It will work.
And all then I can take for 2 hours. How about you guys? I'm out of questions for now.
That's okay. If there's nothing other, we appreciate it.
My brain is right about now.
Yeah, This is a different way to look at things. I understand. Hopefully, you could see some use for it. I'm sure Kev and Jennifer will be back in contact with you. If there's nothing else, I'm going to turn it back over to Robert.
Hey, Tom, thank you very, very much. Very, very much appreciate your taking the time to go through this with us.
Yeah, that's
I appreciate you. Happy to do it.
You built a nice toy.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of people happy.
Yeah. That was, no, sorry.
Go ahead, Robert.
Hello.
Well, that was a great presentation, Tom. It flowed very, very well. And I absorbed a lot more than the previous demo that you did. So it was very helpful for me. So, thank you for all of that. It was terrific. And so I hope everyone had all their questions answered. And whatever questions come up, you can always email us, with your questions, and we'll get an answer back to you. And we'll be in touch with you. So thank you for attending, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all for your time.
Robert,